This is so cool!
Hello there, Gamerinos and Gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today I take a little look at Starfield. Now, I haven't nearly seen all of this game. I kinda wanted to say all it has to offer, but I'm not so sure about that. I haven't seen most of the content, but since this is another Bethesda open world RPG, most of its content is just more of the same. But wait a minute, this doesn't sound so good. This doesn't sound like a recommendation at all. Well, it still is. I played a bunch of this game and didn't scratch the surface of this vast game world, and I haven't satiated my appetite for it in the least. If you've enjoyed Skyrim and Fallout 4, then this is just the game for you. Hundreds upon hundreds of hours of quests, dungeon crawling, looting, and mostly strolling through randomly generated environments. Lush garden worlds, majestic forests, swamps filled with life, but mostly wastelands. Lots and lots of dead worlds, rocky terrain, a bit of sand if you're lucky. But we're not talking about an open world. This game is filled to the brim with a whole galaxy full of open worlds, with all the massive barren wastelands you could possibly desire, with incredibly long stretches of empty desert where the handful of landmarks are really far away from each other. It's realistic, I guess, but at that point I'd rather have it so that every greater landmark on a world is its own area, with the actually visitable locations condensed into smaller areas that are more easy to traverse. As it is now, you can actually land on any location on a planet aside from things like the ocean, which is kind of remarkable, if it weren't all just copy-pasted versions of the planet's primary biome. Cities, buildings, mines, spaceships, everything is fine, pretty much as we know it from the Fallout games. Fun playgrounds, many paths to approach your objective, optional rooms to the side, lots of loot. The actual handcrafted levels are really fun to traverse. But the planet or moon surfaces are honestly exactly what I expected. It's bland open spaces I mindlessly run through to reach a landmark 1,000 meters away, keeping my scanner interface up the whole time to see if there's an interesting resource somewhere along the way. Landmarks are copy-pasted outposts, refineries or other structures created with the same tools you use for base building, or craters from meteorites, or the same empty and boring caves, with carelessly placed loot like a crate full of credits just out there in the middle of nowhere, or a unique modified spacesuit next to a dilapidated gas silo. You're tasked with the same arbitrary fetch quests or missions where you need to travel to a certain point and return over and over again, just to fill this empty world with something. This game isn't an ocean with the depth of a puddle. It's a whole universe with the depth of a puddle. And if you don't mind the mindless running around, collecting copy-pasted resources to build structures to mine more resources, like this was a higher budget cookie clicker. If all you want is an endless supply of content in an arguably exhilarating setting, then this game delivers, same as its predecessors. You get hours upon hours of content, traversing countless different biomes, swamplands and forests, wastelands of all colors. There's not much to it, but if you just want to have some easygoing fun, just mine some resources, fight some generic enemies, and have this completionist accomplishment from filling out lists when you scanned all the plants, collected all the trinkets, explored all the planets and moons, then there is some good fun to have. Hell, I wasted hours just on the empty Mars surface, always traveling farther to the next landmark, grabbing all the minerals along the way, looting weapons and spacesuits I'm just gonna sell as soon as my inventory is full. Again. And to be fair, the game innovated and improved on its predecessor's mechanics and systems. It's not just Skyrim in space or Fallout on the moon. You see that this is most certainly a Bethesda RPG, that it fits neatly into the Elder Scrolls and Fallout legacy, that it completes this kinda unholy trinity. But it took it a few steps further. The character creation is once again massive, complete with particularly detailed facial reconstruction and two-dimensional body type adjustment. with countless little details to add to your character, as well as useless personal pronouns that don't appear to be used at all in the game. Good job, Bethesda. This is an even more blatantly lazy attempt at inclusion than making all the potential love interests in Fallout 4 bi, so to not have to program any personality into them. Well, I guess the work went into the core gameplay. Skills in this game aren't a list of general actions you put points into that affect the different mechanics, but they are more akin to feats, special abilities you unlock over time. You don't need to raise your lockpicking skill to open locks at an equally high challenge rating. You unlock a smaller number of different tiers of the security skill. There are no complicated equations evolving your different weapon skills when attacking an opponent. There's just skills for weapon categories that give you a damage boost or special effect. It's more in line with Fallout 4 than any of the other Bethesda RPGs. And while I criticized the system in that game, and I really hated the perk system in Fallout 4 because it dumped down and threw away the complexity I enjoy from Fallout. I do appreciate it in this game. It's a bit more of an abstract form of building your character and has you commit to fewer but bigger enhancements at a time without the juggling of skill points for, let's face it, meaningless improvements in meaningless skills. Not saying raising a large number of skills and abilities in smaller increments is always bad, but Bethesda RPGs are really light on the whole RPGing, so I welcome this approach that trades superficial complexity for more deliberate playing decisions. Do you want to get more out of the new rifles you found on that pirate base? Put the next point into rifle proficiency. Or do you want to be sneaky and get nice and close to your enemies with melee weapons? Then put your points into dueling and stealth for added damage. Or maybe you want to put all the resources you find to good use and research better weapon and armor modifications to give yourself an edge over your opponents, then put your points into various science and crafting skills. And as an added benefit, they even put in the essence of Elder Scrolls into their refurbished skill system. In Elder Scrolls games, you grew more proficient in any skill by just using it. This game has a similar system in where you have to complete a certain challenge with any skill before you are allowed to raise it further. You have to use pistols to kill your enemies to unlock higher tiers of the pistol skill. Now you can of course abuse the mechanic and only swap to the pistol for the killing shot, and maybe they could have implemented this better, maybe just require you to fire your pistol at valid targets or something like that. But on the other hand, you have to be actively trying to circumvent the mechanics to even have this be an issue. So I don't really see a problem with this. And you can't bypass all the challenges. Most require you to do a specific thing. You have to travel long distances on foot while being nearly over encumbered to unlock higher tiers in the weightlifting skill that governs your carrying weight. You have to pick locks to be allowed to raise your security skill. And you have to persuade others to raise your persuasion skill. And thank goodness they dropped their Mass Effect inspired travesty of a dialogue system from Fallout 4 for once again an actual CRPG system, where you have multiple available dialogue options depending on your progress in a quest, choices you made before, character backgrounds you've chosen during character creation, or even unlocked skills. So if you're a master pickpocket, you might get some additional dialogue options during certain conversations. And when the game calls for a persuasion skill check, you have to tackle a little minigame in where you are presented with all kinds of different arguments to make a certain point, some of them nicer and some of them more assertive, and you have to convince the other person within a limited number of turns by scoring enough points. Dialogue lines that reward more points have a higher chance to fail though, so you have to pick your arguments carefully. But as long as your last attempt isn't a failure, you won't fail the check completely, whatever that means. So leaving an easy option as a kind of safety measure is a valid tactic. At first I saw some Oblivion in there, what with the differently valued responses, but there is no back and forth with likes and dislikes like it was in Oblivion. If you fail a check, you just wasted a turn and discarded that response, but you don't lose any progress in your persuasion attempt. It's a nice little minigame that lets you take a bit more of an active role than it would have been with just a single skill check, but it isn't really deep or complex and you won't ever learn anything new or different depending on your responses. Deus Ex Human Revolution had long and well-written conversation for each of the different persuasion options, but here it's just a prettied up scoreboard and only success or failure decide how the conversation evolves. It's still a nice addition to the game that might get tedious at some point, but I haven't reached that point yet. Lockpicking also got a new coat of paint. Instead of pushing pins or wiggling a bobby pin around, you now have to match different configurations of your digipick to the lock. You have to select multiple configuration and think ahead, because undoing a wrongly chosen configuration costs you a whole pick. And it is possible to waste multiple picks on a single lock just because you weren't attentive enough. A higher security skill makes matters a bit easier by highlighting working configurations, though not necessarily the correct ones, or giving you the ability to discard wrong configurations altogether. Not that you really need any help with this, since this is a rather easy minigame without the risk and punishment from the previous minigames. The at times random nature of the pins in Oblivion could cause one of your lockpicks to break, and since you couldn't guess the sweet spot of a lock in Fallout without blindly trying at least once, it was possible to lose a bobby pin for no fault of your own. Not in this game. You always see the complete puzzle and can safely adjust all of your configurations until you're certain you found the correct solution before you have to commit to even one attempt. The minigame clearly works, but with no real chance of failure, I don't really see the point. BioShock had a time limit on its puzzles, and System Shock didn't stop the action around you. Each one would be an improvement on this minigame. Then there's also once again crafting. Lots and lots of crafting. You can craft modifications for your weapons and spacesuits at dedicated workbenches. You can produce drugs and medicine at pharmaceutical stations. Cooking is its own skill this time around. You can produce structures for outposts and special materials for other crafting projects, and to unlock all these crafting recipes you need to complete research projects that are just crafting projects with a different name, and seem to be here to add another step in your production line to make it appear more complex. For all these projects you need resources, of course, and you get those from plants and wildlife. From liberated stashes, of course, from little deposits you can manually mine, and of course from the ground itself. It doesn't look like scanning all the flora and fauna has an effect on what and how many resources you find. Only some skill bonuses affect this, but researching a species to 100% does list a lot of helpful information so that you can quickly find out where to gather which resource. To get a steady supply of certain minerals and gases, you need to construct bases on all the different worlds. Scan the surface for a higher concentration of certain elements and place a beacon there. This marks an area as your personal building space where you can place harvesters, storage units, generators and other power sources, defenses and of course living and working units complete with all kinds of different furniture. And to keep your outposts from falling apart, you can assign your crew members to them, and you find those all over the galaxy. Some of them join you after you help them with a request, some join you during your main quest, but most of them are mercenaries you can hire for a sometimes larger and sometimes smaller amount of credits. This whole system is an evolution on Fallout 4's base building, but sees much more use in here. You actually get things done, your mining activities are beneficial to all your crafting projects, and it just feels good to settle on uncharted worlds, get a base of operation going. This new setting just fits the system really well, and I see myself goofing around with it a lot, since I really enjoy me some base building. The biggest new mechanic with Starfield is of course interstellar travel. You have your very own starship in this game and can build, buy or even commandeer more of them. You can assign a crew to them, you can upgrade its weapon systems, shields and engine, and you can take it for a spin inside the vastness of deep space, travel to distant worlds, look for space stations or derelict spaceships, or fight space pirates or other ships. Now the spaceflight is a bit janky. It actually goes for a simulation attempt, but it isn't too deep. You have to divide a limited amount of energy between different systems. Your engine, shields, different weapon systems and your gravitational boost. this game's excuse for a fast travel system and the explanation for why you're able to be just one call away from any point in the galaxy. Navigating your systems on mouse and keyboard is a bit cumbersome, with you having to hold the Alt key and cycle through them with A and D, and allocating or decreasing energy with W and S, preventing you from aligning your ship or accelerating. Steering exclusively with the mouse also feels a bit weird, but it works. It feels a lot better on controller, but since the rest of the game plays like a first-person shooter or a really weird third-person shooter, I'd rather stick with mouse and keyboard. On that note, to me it feels like the game is sometimes really precise in noting what you aim at. Like, you look 1 pixel away from, let's say, an apple, for example, and the game doesn't target it anymore for interaction. So I had a much easier time exploring and looting with keyboard and mouse as well, but that might just be me. Back to space travel. You can't really gauge distances in space. The game tries to be quite realistic in that regard. If there isn't any debris or asteroids and the like floating around you, you don't feel that you're even moving at all. I've read that it's actually possible to manually travel in real time to any point in the galaxy, just that it would take a really long time, and holy damn, I don't even want to know how long it would take, seeing as I don't even seem to make any progress approaching a planet I fast traveled to. It's fine though. Any named location in the galaxy is a little, well, a giant arena with pockets of activity that you sometimes can wreak a bit of havoc in before chartering a course to the next space station or moon or whatever. Some people complained about the need to travel back and forth using the menu, but it actually fits this game's setting quite well. You're not running through fields and meadows or a post-apocalyptic wasteland. You're traveling the stars, which requires precise navigation, math and science and all kinds of computer stuff. Having your navigation software do the heavy lifting only makes sense. But yeah, some quests have you navigating the menus more than the actual space around you, which could have been handled better. But this is a problem with quest design and not with basic traversal. Traveling on a planet's surface is similar to other Bethesda RPGs. Controls are basically the same, but there is a twist to it in the form of gravity. Some worlds have a standard gravity of 1.0, but then there are those with a higher or lower gravitational pull. That affects your jumping height and also speed. There are worlds where you barely manage to lift your feet off the ground, and then those where you have an airtime of about 5 minutes. This not only makes every world feel just a bit different and can of course lead to some fun shenanigans, it also introduces a bit of depth into exploration and combat. I mean, the ability to jump 10 meters into the air and vault buildings should factor into your battle tactics. And enemies employ these tactics as well. Not that the combat gets too complicated though. Enemies do rely on low gravity or their boost packs to jump up railways and the like. They run from cover to cover, try to stay out of your line of sight as long as they're not attacking you themselves. But when they return fire, they just stand there, out in the open. They don't use their group advantage, they don't get more cautious when surrounded by their comrades' corpses. They sometimes flee when they're low on health, but that's it. Fighting enemies is really just an ammo and damage check and not a sophisticated bullet ballet. But this has also been true for Fallout. I mean, these games are RPGs at their core with shooter elements and not the other way around. It's a shame though that the RPG is so bland as well. I had so many quests that just required me to go to a place and then return. There is a kind of faction system that governs different bounties on your head. There is an approval system for your crewmates, where your different followers gain or lose sympathy for you depending on certain actions you take or answers you give while they are in your active party. There are sometimes different ways to complete a quest, and sometimes NPCs refer to your background and your accomplishments, but all of it just feels so superficial. Maybe something big happens later in the game, but for now I don't feel like I have any impact on, well, anything. Certainly not the galaxy, but also not really on the people I meet. That's kinda par for the course though with Bethesda. They are RPGs in the broadest sense, because you have to manage your character's stats. I like to refer to Bethesda RPGs as explorathons. They create giant worlds for you to stroll through, find little rewards at every corner, sometimes a bit of lore or a nice looking landmark. This is where the true strength of a Bethesda RPG lies. And the new mechanics like the low or high gravity and the new affliction system in where certain types of damage can cause longer lasting penalties like lung damage that has you cough all the time and waste your oxygen, your stamina in this game, or a sprained ankle that drains stamina while sneaking, are keeping things fresh. The overhauled encumbrance system also complements the larger areas and longer travel times. Instead of being forced to only walk as soon as you're over encumbered, you now can keep running and even sprinting, but everything faster than a walk, even while sneaking, drains your oxygen. Fast. Faster the more you're over encumbered. It makes traversal less tedious without making item weight redundant. But with all the improved stuff comes also a lot of unnecessary oddities and unpolished things. You once again find a lot of books and notes and audio logs and skill magazines, and I really do like the skill magazines in these games because they grant a lot of different bonuses that aren't always covered by your core skills. But why can't I pick up books without reading them? Or read them without putting them in my inventory? Elder Scrolls nailed that 17 years ago, so why is this even an issue in this game? And why do notes physically stay in my inventory? They have no mass and no value. Why don't I have a PDA or datapad or pocket computer or codex or whatever you want to call it in this future sci-fi game where everything is possible and technology can be as small as you want it to be and have all the notes listed on there, neatly sorted. Maybe even add the text from the books as well so that you can still read the flavor text even after storing them in your apartment or selling them. When naming your character, you cannot move the cursor around. If you want to fix a typo, you have to delete every letter before it and type it in again. And if you visit a plastic surgeon to alter your appearance, you have to re-enter your name again. It's not even optional, your name just gets erased. I misclicked and created my character with really obnoxious earrings. Or at least I thought so, but the sliders have this weird habit of jumping to a certain position when you're not looking. And to take off accessories, you also have to visit the plastic surgeon and pay 500 credits. The game is full of cheap visual effects or weird looking characters that just scream randomly generated from your character creator, or NPCs glitching out on you. Sometimes objects are just floating in the air, like computer terminals with nothing on it. Action prompts are not appearing, or location markers on your HUD or map, which is a problem when most of the levels are just giant wastelands stretching far into every direction. Sometimes the whole location isn't registered by the game. I had a whole building with multiple levels and enemy encounters suddenly be marked as discovered and all that after shutting the game down and booting it up again later that day. There are dialogue options with nothing in it. And with all the cluttered environments, to have it more detailed and look lived in, of course, it's only a matter of time until you get stuck and have to jump over the odd table to get out and maybe push something down from it and immediately get a bounty on your head. Damn, this universe is harsh. Your scanner doesn't always know what it wants to tell you, or maybe this NPC spawned in 2 locations simultaneously. I can't be sure with a Bethesda game. Sometimes your crew thinks it's safe to step out of their spacesuits on a world without any atmosphere, and the game thinks it's fine as well, which is really immersion breaking in my space travel game. So as you can see, this is more Bethesda. A new coat of paint, some improvements, some alterations, but basically what you'd expect from an Bethesda RPG. If you hate the core concept of these games, then Starfield won't change your mind on this. But if you enjoy the sheer endless amount of exploration, especially now with all the different biomes, with this setting of interstellar travel, with all the little goofy systems that come with the outer space setting, then Starfield offers hundreds upon hundreds hours of fun. I personally am of the sort that despises Bethesda for their laziness when it comes to fixing the glitchy broken mess that is their game engine, for the shallow systems and bland storylines. But nevertheless, I can waste hours inside their worlds and there's some good fun to have. They understand how to exploit our human urges with rewards and upgrades every few minutes, with checklists to fill, with little highlights just far away from each other to keep our anticipation at a steady level. And in all fairness, they can create some good atmosphere. Maybe not with their actual set pieces or story payoffs, but when exploring the wilderness, or a shipwreck in an asteroid field, or a forsaken gloomy mine. The different environments can look stunning at times, and you'll see some creatively weird alien flora and fauna designs. There is a lot to do in this game, not always the highest quality content, but good enough to keep you entertained. And that's what Bethesda RPGs are all about. Entertaining you, not necessarily make you think or strategize or reflect on your values. It was Egoraptor, back when he had some credibility, who compared some games to high-class desserts and some to a bag of chips, just there to consume it all in one go and crave the next bag. Bethesda makes bags of chips, albeit giant bags of chips, and that's okay. I mean, I can go for a bag of chips every once in a while. So yeah, I do recommend this game, flaws and all. And if you happen to have a Gamepass subscription, you can just download the game and play it. And if you aren't already subscribed to it, well, this game certainly justifies the fee for the next month, together with many other fun and even high quality games. The last game on Game Pass I showcased was Sea of Stars, which is a really great retro throwback JRPG. So yeah, if you're unsure if you want to fork over $60 for this, try out the Game Pass for only $12 and test the game over the next month. But no matter what you're gonna do, have an amazing day. This has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.